Chapter 11. Invitation. Days went by in a blissful haze, like a dream Valyn never wanted to wake from. Every brush of hands and every stolen glance felt like the first, sending sparks beneath her skin. Asta had many questions regarding Valyn's thoughts, and she answered without hesitation. Most were the girl seeking reassurance that Valyn was truly past the reason for their initial meeting. Valyn could not care less. Her happiness at present was more important. She felt she could get past anything for Asta, that nothing else would matter so long as Asta continued to love her. But Valyn had a question of her own, a thought that had been nagging at her mind. Even as Asta's hand rested upon Valyn's lap, stroking the ends of Valyn's hair as they looked out over the lakeside, Valyn's brows knit in question. Asta seemed to sense Valyn's thoughts as she turned her head to face her. "What is it?" she asked, her face breathtakingly lovely in the orange and yellow hues of the sunset. Valyn sighed, resting her hand upon Asta's cheek and rubbing a thumb along her skin. "I have been wondering for some time. Why were you in that prison? How did you get in?" The other elf bit her lip in thought before speaking in a more serious tone. "The dealing and buying of poison is against the law. I simply told them I bought some, and they were happy enough to believe an elf confessing to a crime." "But why?" pressed Valyn. She could not understand why Asta had subjected herself willingly to such pain and confinement. Asta smiled sadly, reached up a hand to meet with Valyn's, and rested her fingers there with a light gentleness. "Why do you live in seclusion? Why deny companionship?" Valyn then understood, completely and utterly. Fear of hurting others, fear of losing what you hold dear. They were exactly her own thoughts. Even so, Asta's willingness to lock herself in a cage just to keep from hurting Valyn was alarming. Her own pain was of no consequence. Instead of saying so, Valyn leaned down and brushed her lips against Asta's. "Never again," she said softly. "You will not be caged for my sake." Asta lifted herself upright, stood and brushed out her skirt, and outstretched a hand to Valyn. "I cannot say it was a pleasant experience, so I will do my best." Valyn smiled up at her, taking her hand as they began to walk back to her cottage, the sky darkening behind them. As the night sounds of the forest rang out, Valyn focused solely on the feeling of their linked hands and the presence of Asta's body next to hers. She glanced over at Asta more than a few times, and when she was caught, Asta would smile, threatening to stop what little breathing Valyn could already manage. Once they arrived at the door, Valyn tried to pull her hand away to allow Asta to leave, but the girl gripped harder instead. The woman was puzzled, though not disappointed. She wanted to ask what was wrong, but Asta spoke first, stepping so close that Valyn could smell the subtle scent of mint upon her skin. "Are you so eager to be rid of me tonight?" Valyn was anything but, and the question confused her. "No, of course not." "Then invite me in." She felt the air between them change, as though a piece of flint had been struck and a fire began to bloom. Even without a real fire, Valyn felt her skin grow hot. "You need no invitation," she replied, swallowing down the welling feelings in her chest. Asta smiled coyly, an expression Valyn could get used to. "Very well. Shall we?" Valyn did not need to be asked again. The moment she opened the door and slammed it shut behind them, she took Asta's face in both hands and kissed her fiercely. Asta took it in stride, opening her lips and making a pleased sound that sent a shiver down Valyn's spine. Before she could do anything else, Asta pressed herself against Valyn, her back now to the wall as they clung to each other like wind-whipped leaves in a storm. She was getting swept away, and she had never felt anything as joyous. Even as she tried to fully lose herself, fear still pricked at the back of her neck. She wanted to be gentle, to take it slow, but her desire was so strong she worried it would be too much. Valyn slowed her pace, though it ached to do so, and Asta pulled away instantly, leaving Valyn gasping for breath. I have said it to you before, and I shall say it again. Do not treat me as if I will break. I am not in the mood to deny you, nor myself, Asta said, her voice stern. Valyn still hesitated, resting her hands on Asta's hips and gripping them with barely any strength. Are you sure? In response, Asta's hand reached to untuck Valyn's shirt, her fingers running up Valyn's back. With just enough pressure to feel it well, her nails scraped against Valyn's skin, eliciting a soft moan from the woman. All fears dissipated, and Valyn quickly locked their lips together in a torrent. She saw Asta as soft and beautiful, a flower whispering in the breeze. But this version of Asta was entirely different, begging, hungry, almost violent. Even so, it enthralled her, and she craved it wholly. Her hand reached to tangle in Asta's long navy hair, and when she pulled at it, Asta's head faced upwards towards the ceiling. Valyn's lips moved to her cheek, her jaw, her chin, then finally down to her neck, all while Asta sighed in contentment. It did not take long for Valyn to eventually pull Asta to her bed, where she looked down at the sea of dark hair and pale eyes. She was lost, fully immersed in the girl before her, and she took a moment to etch the vision into her mind. A blush upon her pale face, eyes half-lidded, marks on her exposed collarbone, and all of it for Valyn. You're perfect, she said. Asta wrapped her arms around Valyn's neck, pulling her down into an agonizingly slow kiss. So says my love, so it must be in her eyes. Valyn shook her head, dusting kisses over any bare skin she saw. No, she breathed. Say my name instead. Valyn, Asta replied, her hands pulling up the woman's shirt. My Valyn. So Valyn forgot every pain life had bestowed upon her. She forgot about the magic and about the world itself. Nothing mattered more than Asta. Nothing was so lovely or so exquisite. For at least that night, with skin against skin and her breath one with Asta's, she let herself be happy. The two elves slept wrapped around each other's bodies, the rising sun heralding a new day with the light peeking from the crack under the front door. Valyn awoke first, and she roused Asta gently, brushing loose hair behind her ear. She gazed down at her with a smile plastered to her face, the expression impossible to be rid of, especially as the girl's eyes fluttered open, a yawn escaping her lips. Valyn's smile only grew. Good morning, Asta mumbled, nuzzling close into Valyn's chest. So Valyn let her stay like that as long as she wanted. The day would march on regardless. As the time passed, Valyn ran her gaze over Asta's skin and realized that with so much of it bare before her, she was able to see things she hadn't before. Healing bruises colored her arms, as well as old, scarred gashes that peeked from her back to the tops of her shoulders. Valyn thought to the lake and their rock hunt, how Asta had never shown her body despite the water and the blistering sun. Even farther back, she remembered the cave in the rain, and how the girl had been so meek and afraid. The thought of anyone hurting Asta, leaving ugly marks upon her skin, caused Valyn's chest to clench in anger. Had it been the villagers, abusing an elf as they so often did? After rescuing Asta from the underground prison, it seemed likely, but the thought felt bitter in her mind, as if it was only halfway to the truth. She wanted to ask when Asta had been hurt, by whom, and why, but seeing the girl's peaceful face in slumber calmed her rage, if only slightly. She would find out soon enough, and she would have them dealt with, but not now. Another hour or so passed before Asta finally began to move, much to Valyn's disappointment, as gazing at her serene, sleeping face had been very pleasant. Asta leaned over to kiss Valyn's forehead before standing up and gathering her things. As she did so, her eyes darted to and from Valyn multiple times, clearly trying to find the right words. What is it? Valyn asked, hoping her prompt would help. I have something I must tell you, but you must let me finish before you reach a conclusion, Asta replied. Despite her anxiety rising against her attempts to push it down, Valyn nodded. The troop has told me they are moving on, she began. Tensions within the town are high, and with an escaped criminal in their midst, they think it best to leave. Valyn waited, but a sinking feeling stirred within her. They have been good to me ever since that day, but I am a child no longer, and I told them I would make a decision of my own. Valyn held her breath. When you asked me to stay, did you mean it in the way I hoped? Valyn nearly cried out of joy, and her emotions shook like an earthquake in her chest, but all she could muster was a teary-eyed nod. Then, if you'll have me, I would like to stay. As if it was even a question. Valyn stood up and wrapped Asta in a tight embrace, her face sitting in the crook of Asta's neck. Never again would she be so alone, as long as Asta wanted the same. The girl laughed, hugging Valyn just as tight. When they released each other, Asta gathered the last of her things and led Valyn to the door by hand. This will be my last day with them, she said. I will gather all my belongings, and then I will return. Will you manage the day without me? The last had been said as a joke, but Valyn felt doubt nonetheless. No day would be right without Asta, but she had goodbyes to make, and Valyn would not keep her from them. I will wait here for your return. I should be back by sunset. Asta stood on her toes and kissed Valyn's forehead, then moved down to her lips. Valyn missed the touch immediately as Asta turned away, taking a few steps out into the green of the woods, a star among the leaves. Asta, Valyn called. The girl turned. A savakit. What does that mean? Asked Asta. Valyn smiled broadly, folding her arms and leaning against the doorframe. I will tell you when you return. And she watched as Asta grinned and shook her head, waving to Valyn as she made her way back to the troop. The promise of a future, one with someone beside her, was making Valyn think that all the years alone had been worth it all along. Once Asta was settled, Valyn would see to it that the ones who had caused her pain before would become nothing but dust in the wind. That was right and just. She knew it to be true as a whisper, soft as a drifting leaf, echoed in her mind and urged her towards violence. Even if the magic felt wrong in her hands, ensuring Asta's safety was all she cared about. Her own discomfort did not matter. She knew she was right. She had to be.